Okay, so I think we're ready to go.
Chapter 52. Krishna, the Ranchur. How do you say that, Maharaj?
Ranchur.
Ranchur. Krishna, the Ranchur. When Muchukunda, the celebrated descendant of the Ikshvaku dynasty, was favored by Lord Krishna,
Ranchur.
he circumambulated the Lord within the cave and then came out. On coming out of the cave, Muchukunda saw that the human species had surprisingly been reduced in stature to pygmy size. Similarly, the trees had also been far reduced in size, and Muchukunda could immediately understand that the current age was Kali Yuga. Therefore, without diverting his attention, he began to travel north. Eventually, he reached the mountain known as Gandhamadana, where there were many trees such as sandalwood and other flowering trees whose fragrance made anyone who reached them joyful. He decided to remain in that Gandhamadana mountain region to execute austerities and penances for the rest of his life. It appears that this place is situated in the northernmost part of the Himalayan mountains, where the abode of Naranarayana is situated. This place is still existing and is called Badarika-ashram. In Badarika-ashrama, he engaged himself in the worship of Lord Krishna, tolerating all kinds of pains and pleasures and the other dualities of this material world. Lord Krishna returned to the vicinity of Mathura, where he fought with the soldiers of Kalayavana and killed them one after another. After this, he collected all the booty from the dead bodies, and under his direction, it was loaded on bullock carts and brought back to Dwaraka. Meanwhile, Jarasandha again attacked Mathura, this time with bigger divisions of soldiers, numbering 23 Akshauhinis. Lord Sri Krishna wanted to save Mathura from the 18th attack of the great military divisions of King Jarasandha. To prevent further killing of soldiers and to attend to other important business, Lord Krishna left the battlefield without fighting. Actually, he was not at all afraid, but he pretended to be an ordinary human being frightened by the immense quantity of soldiers and resources of Jarasandha. Without any weapons, Krishna left the battlefield. Although his lotus feet were as soft as the petals of a lotus flower, he proceeded for a very long distance on foot. This time, Jarasandha thought that Krishna and Balaram were very much afraid of his military strength and were fleeing the battlefield. He followed them with all his chariots, horses, and infantry. He thought Krishna and Balaram to be ordinary human beings, and he was trying to measure the activities of the Lord. Due to this pastime, Krishna is known as Ranchor, which means one who has left the battlefield. In India, especially in Gujarat, there are many temples of Krishna known as temples of Ranchorji. Ordinarily, if a king leaves the battlefield without fighting, he's called a coward. But when Krishna enacts this pastime, leaving the battlefield without fighting, he is worshipped by the devotees. A demon always tries to measure the opulence of Krishna, whereas a devotee never tries to measure his strength and opulence, but always surrenders unto him and worships him. By following in the footsteps of pure devotees, we can know that Krishna, the Ranchorji, left the battlefield not because he was afraid, but because he had some other purpose. The purpose, as it will be revealed, was to attend a confidential letter sent by Rukmini, his future first wife. Krishna's leaving the battlefield is a display of one of his 6 opulences. Krishna is the supreme powerful, the supreme wealthy, the supreme famous, the supreme wise, and the supreme beautiful. Similarly, he is the supreme renouncer. Srimad Bhagavatam clearly states that he left the battlefield in spite of having ample military strength. Even without his militia, he alone would have been sufficient to defeat the army of Jarasandha, as he had done 17 times before. Therefore, his leaving the battlefield is an example of his supermost opulence, renunciation. After traversing a very long distance, the brothers pretended to become tired. To mitigate their weariness, they climbed up a mountain many miles above sea level. This mountain was called Pravarshana due to constant rain, for the peak was always covered with clouds sent by Indra. Jarasandha took it for granted that the 2 brothers were afraid of his military power and had hidden themselves at the top of the mountain. First, he tried to find them, searching for a long time, but when he failed, he decided to trap and kill them by setting fires around the peak. He therefore surrounded the peak with firewood and set it ablaze. As the fire spread more and more, Krishna and Balaram jumped from the top of the mountain down to the ground, a distance of 88 miles. Thus, while the peak was burning up, Krishna and Balaram escaped, unseen by Jarasandha and his men. Jarasandha concluded that the 2 brothers had burned to ashes and that there was no need of further fighting. Thinking himself successful in his efforts, he left the city of Mathura and returned to his home in the kingdom of Magadha. Gradually, Krishna and Balaram reached the city of Dwaraka, which was surrounded by the sea. Following this, Sri Balaram married Revati, daughter of King Raivata, ruler of Anartha province. This is explained in the 9th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. After the marriage of Baladev, Krishna married Rukmini. Rukmini was the daughter of King Bhishmaka, ruler of the province known as Vidarbha. Just as Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead, Vasudeva, Rukmini is the supreme goddess of fortune, Mahalakshmi. According to the authority of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the expansion of Krishna and that of Srimati Radharani are simultaneous. Krishna expands himself into various Vishnu Tattva forms, and Srimati Radharani expands herself into various Shakti Tattva forms by her internal potency as multiforms of the goddess of fortune. According to Vedic convention, there are 8 kinds of marriage. In the first-class marriage system, the parents of the bride and bridegroom arrange the marriage date. Then, in royal style, the bridegroom goes to the house of the bride, and in the presence of brahmanas, priests, and relatives, the bride is given in charity to the bridegroom. Besides this, there are other systems, such as the Gandharva and Rakshasa marriages. Krishna married Rukmini according to the Rakshasa system, kidnapping her in the presence of his many rivals like Shishupal, Jarasandha, and Shalva. While Rukmini was being given in charity to Shishupal, Krishna snatched her from the marriage arena exactly as Garuda snatched a pot of nectar from the demigods. Rukmini, the only daughter of King Bhishmaka, was exquisitely beautiful. She was known as Ruchiranana, which means one who has a beautiful face expanded like a lotus flower. Devotees of Krishna are always eager to hear about the transcendental activities of the Lord. His activities of fighting, kidnapping, and running away from the battlefield are all transcendental, being on the absolute platform, and devotees take a transcendental interest in hearing of them. The pure devotee does not make the distinction that some activities of the Lord should be heard and others avoided. There is, however, a class of so-called devotees known as Prakrita Sahajyas who are very interested in hearing about Krishna's Rasa Leela with the gopis, but not about his fighting with his enemies. They do not know that his bellicose activities and his friendly activities with the gopis are equally transcendental, being on the absolute platform. All the transcendental pastimes of Krishna described in Srimad Bhagavatam are relished by pure devotees through submissive oral reception. They do not reject even a drop. The story of Krishna's marriage with Rukmini is described as follows. The king of Vidarbha, Maharaj Bhishmaka, was very qualified and devoted. He had 5 sons and only 1 daughter. The first son was known as Rukmi, the second Rukmaratha, the third Rukmabahu, the fourth Rukmakesha, and the 5th Rukmamali. The brothers had 1 young sister, Rukmani. She was beautiful and chaste, and was meant to be married to Lord Krishna. Many saintly persons and sages like Narada Muni used to visit the palace of King Bhishmaka. Naturally, Rukmini had a chance to talk with them, and in this way, she obtained information about Krishna. She was informed about the 6 opulences of Krishna, and simply by hearing about him, she desired to surrender herself to his lotus feet and become his wife. Krishna had also heard of Rukmini. She was the reservoir of all transcendental qualities: intelligence, auspicious physical features, liberal mindedness, exquisite beauty, and righteous behavior. Krishna therefore decided that she was fit to be his wife. All of the relatives of King Bhishmaka decided that Rukmini should be given in marriage to Krishna. But her elder brother Rukmi, despite the desire of the others, arranged for her marriage with Shishupal, a determined enemy of Krishna. When the black-eyed, beautiful Rukmini heard of the settlement, she immediately became very morose. However, being a king's daughter, she understood political diplomacy and decided that there was no use in simply being morose. Some steps should be taken immediately. After some deliberation, she decided to send a message to Krishna, and so that she might not be deceived, she selected a qualified Brahmana as her messenger. Such a qualified Brahmana is always truthful and is a devotee of Vishnu. Without delay, she sent the Brahmana to Dwarka. Reaching the gate of Dwarka, the Brahmana informed the doorkeeper of his arrival, and the doorkeeper led him to the place where Krishna was sitting on a golden throne. Since the Brahmana had the opportunity to be Rukmini's messenger, he was fortunate enough to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, the original cause of all causes. A Brahmana is the spiritual teacher of all the social divisions. Lord Sri Krishna, in order to teach everyone the Vedic etiquette of how to respect a Brahmana, immediately got up and offered him his throne. When the Brahmana was seated on the golden throne, Lord Sri Krishna began to worship him exactly as the demigods worship Krishna. In this way, he taught everyone that worshipping his devotee is more valuable than worshipping him. In due time, the Brahmana took his bath, accepted his meals, and lay down to rest on a bedstead completely bedecked with soft silk. As he was resting, Lord Sri Krishna silently approached and with great respect put the Brahmana's legs on his lap and began to massage them. In this way, Krishna appeared before the Brahmana and said, "My dear Brahmana, I hope that you are executing the religious principles without difficulty and that your mind is always peaceful." Different classes of people in the social system are engaged in various professions. And when one inquires as to the well-being of a particular person, he should do so on the basis of that person's occupation. Therefore, when one inquires as to the welfare of a Brahmana, the questions should be worded according to his condition of life so as not to disturb him. A peaceful mind is the basis for becoming truthful, clean, equipoised, self-controlled, and tolerant. Thus, by attaining knowledge and knowing its practical application in life, one becomes convinced about the absolute truth. The Brahmana knew Krishna to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and still he accepted the respectful service of the Lord on the grounds of Vedic social convention. Lord Sri Krishna was playing just like a human being. Because he belonged to the Kshatriya division of the social system and was a young boy, it was his duty to show respect to such a Brahmana. Lord Krishna continued, "O best of all the Brahmanas, you should always remain satisfied, for if a Brahmana is always self-satisfied, He will not deviate from his prescribed duties. And simply by sticking to one's prescribed duties, everyone, especially a Brahmana, can attain the highest perfection of all desires. Even if a person is as opulent as the king of heaven, Indra, if he is not satisfied, he inevitably has to transmigrate from one planet to another. Such a person cannot never be happy under any circumstances. But if one's mind is satisfied, even if he is bereft of all possessions, he can be happy living anywhere. This instruction by Krishna to the Brahmana is very significant. The purport is that a true Brahmana should not be disturbed in any situation. In this modern age, Kali Yuga, the so-called Brahmanas have accepted the abominable position of Shudras, or less, and still want to pass as qualified Brahmanas. Actually, a qualified Brahmana always sticks to his own duties and never accepts those of a Shudra or of one less than a Shudra. It is advised in the authorized scriptures that a Brahmana may, under awkward circumstances, accept the profession of a Kshatriya or a Vaishya. But never is he to accept the profession of a Shudra. Lord Krishna declared that a Brahmana will never be disturbed by any adverse conditions if he scrupulously sticks to his religious principles. In conclusion, Lord Sri Krishna said, I offer my respectful obeisances to the Brahmanas and Vaishnavas, for the Brahmanas are always self-satisfied and the Vaishnavas are always engaged in actual welfare activities for human society. They are the best friends of the people in general. They are free from false egoism and are always in a peaceful condition of mind. Lord Krishna then desired to know about the rulers, Kshatriyas and the Brahmanas' kingdom. So he inquired whether the citizens of the kingdom were all happy. A king's qualification is judged by the temperament of the people in the kingdom. If they are happy in all respects, it is to be understood that the king is honest and is executing his duties rightly. Krishna said that the king in whose kingdom the citizens are happy is very dear to him. Of course, Krishna could understand that the Brahmana had come with a confidential message. Therefore he said, if you have no objection, I give you liberty to speak about your mission. Thus, being very much satisfied by these transcendental pastimes with the Lord, the Brahmana narrated the whole story of his mission in coming to see Krishna. He got out the letter Rukmini had written to Krishna and said, these are the words of Princess Rukmini. Quote, my dear Krishna, O infallible and most beautiful one, any human being who happens to hear about your transcendental form and pastimes immediately absorbs through his ears your name, fame, and qualities. Thus all his material pangs subside, and he fixes your form in his heart. Through such transcendental love for you, he always sees you within himself. And by this process, all his desires are fulfilled. Similarly, I have heard of your transcendental qualities. I may be shameless in expressing myself directly, but you have captivated me and taken my heart. You may doubt my steadiness of character, since how could an unmarried young girl like me approach you without any shame? But my dear Mukunda, you are the supreme lion among human beings, the supreme person among persons. Any girl, though not yet having left her home, or even any woman of the highest chastity, would desire to marry you, being captivated by your unprecedented character, knowledge, opulence, and position. I know that you are the husband of the goddess of fortune and are very kind towards your devotees. Therefore, I have decided to become your eternal maidservant. My dear Lord, I dedicate my life and soul unto your lotus feet. I have selected your lordship as my husband, and I therefore request you to accept me as your wife. You are the supreme powerful, O lotus-eyed one. Now I belong to you. If that which is enjoyable for the lion to eat is taken away by the jackal, it will be a ludicrous affair. Therefore, I request you to immediately take care of me before I am taken away by Shishupal and other princes like him. My dear Lord, in my previous life, I may have done public welfare work like digging wells and planting trees, or pious activities such as performing ritualistic ceremonies and sacrifices and serving superiors like the spiritual master, Brahmanas, and Vaishnavas. By these activities, perhaps I have pleased the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayana. If this be so, then I wish that you, Lord Krishna, the brother of Lord Balaram, please come here and catch hold of my hand so that I shall not be touched by Shishupal and his company. Unquote. Rukmini's marriage with Shishupal was already settled. Therefore, she suggested that Krishna kidnap her so that this might be changed. This sort of marriage, in which the girl is kidnapped by force, is known as Rakshasa and is practiced among Kshatriyas, or men with an administrative martial spirit. Because her marriage was already arranged to take place the next day, Rukmini suggested that Krishna come there incognito to kidnap her and then fight with Shishupal and his allies like the king of Magadha. Knowing that no one could conquer Krishna, who would certainly emerge victorious, she addressed him as Ajita, the unconquerable one. Rukmini told Krishna not to be concerned that the fighting would take place within the palace and that many of her family members, including other women, might thus be wounded or even killed. As the king of a country thinks of diplomatic ways to achieve his object, Rukmini, being the daughter of a king, was diplomatic in suggesting how this unnecessary and undesirable killing could be avoided. She explained that it was the custom of her family to visit the temple of goddess Durga, their family deity, before a marriage. The Kshatriya kings were mostly staunch Vaishnavas, worshipping Lord Vishnu in either the Radha Krishna or Lakshmi Narayan form. Still, for their material welfare, they used to worship goddess Durga. They never made the mistake, however, of accepting the demigods as the Supreme Lord on the same level of Vishnu Tattva as do some less intelligent men. To avoid the unnecessary killing of her relatives, Rukmini suggested that it would be the easiest for him to kidnap her while she was either going from the palace to the temple or else returning home. She also explained to Krishna why she was anxious to marry him, even though her marriage was to take place with Shishupal, who was also qualified, being the son of a great king. Rukmini said that she did not think anyone was greater than Krishna, not even Lord Shiva, who is known as Mahadeva, the greatest of all demigods. Lord Shiva also seeks the pleasure of Lord Krishna in order to be delivered from his entanglement in the quality of ignorance within the material world. Although Lord Shiva is the greatest of all great souls, Mahatmas, he keeps on his head the purifying water of the Ganges, which emanates from a hole in this material universe made by the toe of Lord Vishnu. Lord Shiva is in charge of the material quality of ignorance, and to keep himself in a transcendental position, he always meditates on Lord Vishnu or Krishna, and always tries to purify himself with the water of the Ganges. Therefore, Rukmini knew very well that obtaining the favor of Krishna was not easy, since even Lord Shiva must purify himself for this purpose. Surely it would be difficult for Rukmini, who is only the daughter of a Kshatriya king. Thus she desired to dedicate her life to observing severe austerities and penances, such as fasting and going without bodily comforts. If it were not possible in this lifetime to gain Krishna's favor by these activities, she was prepared to die from such austerities and to undergo similar difficulties lifetime after lifetime. In the Bhagavad-Gita, it is said that pure devotees of Lord Krishna execute devotional service with great determination. Such determination, as exhibited by Rukmini Devi, is the only price for purchasing Krishna's favor. One should be strongly determined in Krishna consciousness, and that is the way to ultimate success. After relaying Rukmini Devi's statement to Krishna, the Brahmana said, "My dear Krishna, chief of the Yadu dynasty, I have brought this confidential message for you from Rukmini. Now it is placed before you for your consideration. After due deliberation, you may act as you please. But if you want to do something, you must do it immediately. There is not much time left for action." Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the 52nd chapter of Krishna, Krishna the Ranachur.
Om Jnana Timirandhasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurin Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Sthapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupakada Mahyam Tadhati Shapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Jatapadakamalang Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrasatam Sahagana Raganatan Vitam Stam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lolita Sri Vishakhan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Saptakam Shana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hori Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhobhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Our chapter is a little long, time is a little short, so we'll just do a very brief review. How is our volume? Can you hear? Okay. So Muchukunda comes out of the cave. He sees that everything's reduced. He understands that it's Kali Yuga, and he heads off toward Bhadrakashram, Gandhamadana mountain, to perform tapasya for the rest of his life. Krishna returns to Mathura and kills the remaining soldiers of Kalyavana. And meanwhile, Jarasandha attacks again, 18th time. And this time, instead of wiping out Jarasandha's army, Krishna pretends to be afraid and runs away. Rana means a fight, and Ranchor means one who runs away from a fight. Generally, one who runs away from the battlefield is criticized as reviled as a coward. But when Krishna runs from the battlefield, they build him temples and worship him. So Krishna had some purpose, and that's why he did that. Then Krishna heads off to this mountain, Pravarshana, and Jarasandha can't find him, but decides to set fire to the peak. But Krishna and Balaram leap from the mountain and head back to Dwarka. So Balaram marries Revati. Generally, the elder brother marries first. And Krishna marries Rukmini. As Krishna expands in various forms, so Srimati Radharani expands with him. And so Rukmini is the expansion. All the goddesses of fortune are Shakti Tattva expansions of Srimati Radharani. Rukmini's marriage was arranged with Shishupal, but Rukmini was unhappy with this arrangement and therefore wanted to be married with Krishna. Incidentally, Prabhupada mentions that pure devotees are as interested in hearing about Krishna's martial activities as his conjugal activities. The pure devotees don't reject even a drop of Srimad Bhagavatam. So Krishna's marriage is, Rukmini's marriage is decided with Shishupal, but to escape this, Rukmini sends a message with a Brahmin to Krishna, "You please come and kidnap me." So the Brahmin comes to Dwarka and meets Krishna, and Krishna inquires about his welfare. Prabhupada points out that the questions are put according to one's profession. Explaining this another time, Prabhupada said, you wouldn't meet Srila Prabhupada So you wouldn't meet me and say, "So Swamiji, how's your business going?" That's the kind of question you ask a Vaishya. So how's your business? And for a Brahmin, is your mind peaceful? And for a king, are your citizens happy? So Krishna inquired from the Brahmin about his welfare, and then finally about the message brought from Rukmini. And the message is read. Rukmini had heard about Krishna from Narada and other great sages, and just by hearing has decided no one else would be a fit husband for her. And so she requests Krishna to kidnap her. And being a king's daughter, she's diplomatic, she's got the strategy down, how Krishna can do it without causing needless casualties. And she prays that Krishna will come because she's decided to be his maidservant. And we'll stop there. I'm just giving a short summary this time. We'll see if there's some comments or some questions. Yes.
Krishna. Thank you, Maharaj. I was wondering...
And ask your questions slowly today, because as you might have noticed, this room has quite the echo.
Okay. It said that Rukmini and Radharani are expansion, or Shakti Tattva.
Shakti Tattva, yes.
And said that, I guess we'll stick with that question. In Rukmini's letter to Krishna, she wrote that she was she doesn't know what pious activities she performed in her past life. And often it's said by the gopis, like, to the tree of the flute of Krishna, what pious activities did he perform? And the cowherd boys have performed many pious activities in their previous lives. So it seems that Prabhupada, the philosophy is that the Nitya Siddhas and Shakti Tattvas of Radharani and the gopis and the gopas and residents of Rukmini, but it also seems that there's this common trend for them to say that they've performed many, many pious activities in their previous lives.
It appears that the eternal associates of Krishna get that position by undergoing austerities and penances and so on. So how is that? These are pastimes of the Lord and his associates. These associates are eternal, and yet there's some pastime or some method by which they gain, as it were, their eternal position. Krishna kills a Panchajanya demon, Panchajanya demon, and a demon in the shape of a conch shell, and that's how he gets his conch, Panchajanya. Panchajanyam Rishikesho Devadattam Dhananjaya. So it's part of his eternal paraphernalia, and yet there's a pastime by which he gets it. Similarly, there's some pastimes by which he becomes the son of Nanda Maharaj and Yashoda Mai, although he's eternally the son of Nanda and Yashoda. But there's also some pastime by which they get to be, apparently, the eternal mother and father of Krishna. So these are all arrangements of Krishna's energy. Lakshmi appears to be born from the churning of the ocean of milk, but she's eternally existing. But it appears that she's born of the churning of the milk ocean. So these are all appearances. Lakshmi, Rukmini, the eternal Shakti of Krishna, doesn't have to undergo any penances to get Krishna as her husband. She's eternally the wife of Lord Krishna. And yet, she's ready to do that. Of course, here, if I read the text correctly, she says that she's ready to do it. She doesn't say that she must have done it. But she says, well, if I've done anything, any pious activities, if I've done public welfare activities or anything, given charity, then may the result be that I can be engaged in your service. But she expressed her willingness. I'm ready to do austerities and penances for lifetimes, if that's what I have to do to become your wife. Is that okay?
Yes, I'm
And there's a
wondering,
part two.
kinda, not, does this apply to, I hear that we come from Nitya Baddhas to Nitya Siddhas when we go
From Nitya Baddha to Nitya Siddha.
Yeah, I've read that in Prabhupada's books, that once we get our eternal swarup, we stay there. So that's not a pastime, us struggling.
That's not a pastime.
Okay.
From Nitya Baddha, eternally conditioned, to Nitya Siddha, or technically Sadhan Siddha. Sadhan Siddha means those who've attained eternal perfection by practice of bhakti-yoga. So yes, that's not just a
So there's a
pastime.
difference between the associates
Yeah.
of Krishna. Okay.
With the eternal associates of Krishna, these are leelas. With us, it's a necessity. Thank you. Yes. Switch. Switch it out. There
Hare
you
Krishna.
go.
Yes. So Krishna is serving the Brahmana, doing all kinds of things, and then going to massaging his feet.
If you hold the microphone a little closer.
Yeah. So I feel that sometimes there is in me certain insecurity or reluctancy to and ignorance. How can I serve my superiors in such a way? And sometimes also by attempting to serve a Brahmana or a Vaishnava, they feel not comfortable with me serving them in such an intimate way. So how can we bridge the gap, or how can we attempt to serve?
Sometimes we want to serve, but we feel some insecurity or hesitancy. And sometimes it may appear that the people we want to serve are not so happy with our service. So what do we do about that? Well, as far as insecurity and so on, serve anyway. The mind is always there to say, oh, you're probably not going to work, or probably not going to be rejected, or this or that. So we should try to be engaged in some service. And not worry too much about what the mind may have to say. One way or another, we should be engaged in devotional service, and with assurance from the acharyas that this is the best engagement for us. What else will we do? Karma kanda is not going to make us happy. Jnana kanda, yoga, nothing else is going to be good for us but devotional service. So let us do it. With whatever hesitancy or mental blocks or this or that. Anyway, let us carry on. And if our superiors are not very happy with our service, well, let us continue anyway. Maybe we'll become more expert, or over time they'll see, well, he's not very good, but he's steady. Is that all right?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. When Rukmini had her arranged marriage, she saw the diplomacy in there. She saw.
You're going to have to try a lot harder because of the room.
Okay.
Rukmini has an arranged marriage, and
Yes. And then she saw the diplomacy in that arranged marriage.
She saw the diplomacy. She was the diplomat.
Also, yeah. And she decided to take action.
Right.
So I was wondering, when something happens to us, when do we see it as this is Krishna's arrangement, I should try and be satisfied with this? Or when do we take action against that and follow our own will, it seems?
Yeah. Rukmini took things into her own hands despite her arranged marriage. So when do we take things into our own hands? Ideally, we should be guided by the spiritual master, what to do, what not to do. That's the best for us. The spiritual master or the advanced Vaishnavas, senior Vaishnavas, they'll say, you better do something about this. Or they'll say, Krishna's arrangement. So especially the spiritual master's guidance is wanted. If we don't have the benefit of their association, we may pray to Krishna, you please tell me what to do. You please give your guidance. You please arrange things. Finally, Rukmini, she took it in her hands to write a message, but actually she prayed to Krishna, you please take things into your hand. Is that okay?
Maharaj, here's a little section about in due time the Brahmana took his bath, accepted his meals, laid down. Sorry.
You really have to work hard.
Yes.
For clarity and...
So the Brahmana really took his time. He took a bath, accepted a meal, laid down, and then when he was resting, the Lord silently approached him and awoke him and started massaging, putting his legs on his lap and massaging his
So with
leg.
one night left, how did he have all the time for that?
Right. Yeah. And it's just a theme because I was thinking how Srila Prabhupada achieved so much, but he was never running or this type of it's a theme like like we were talking about Ashwatthama's, and still Arjuna finds time to glorify Krishna and all these very I'm a very nervous person. I'm typically running like a headless chicken here and there, and then I see these devotees. Is this part of like advanced devotional service that your nervousness reduces and you become like that?
So the Brahmin sort of took his time here. He took his bath, took his meal, and this is like there's one night to go before the scheduled wedding. And we sometimes see that Srila Prabhupada or other devotees, they're sort of like that. They take their time. They're not rushing this way and that way like headless chickens. So how do we achieve that, or how do we think about that? And is this what happens, that in the advanced stage, we're no longer nervous and rushed? Okay. It is curious, first, that the Brahmin sort of took a leisurely pace there. I don't know if the acharyas say something about that. One would think that under such circumstances, one might forgo the meal or handle the business first. But I don't know if you want to take a look and see if there's something about that. We did see that Srila Prabhupada was not rushed, because often rushing doesn't get you anywhere. We're just sort of blowing off nervous energy, but not making anything go faster. And acting with deliberation and care sometimes gets us no less of a result and perhaps a better result than rushing into everything because everything's an emergency. That said, Prabhupada was didn't procrastinate. He gave things attention as they needed attention. And very often, it's not put something off, will come meet me Friday, boom, settle the question right here and now. That also prevents you from having to run around a lot. If you put everything off, then at some point it becomes urgent, emergency, we have to deal with this right away. And the whole life becomes like that. If you deal with things as they come, they don't build up and create tension and urgency. So Prabhupada, although he dealt with things in a sort of measured pace, he dealt with things. He didn't just brush them off. That's a further point. Another point is that we have different natures. So some people are more intense, and some people are more easygoing. And it's not that by devotional service, your entire personality changes and you become something the opposite. So the person who's intense is likely to stay intense, but be purified in his intensity. The person who's more, what should we say? Don't want to say laid back, that doesn't quite say it, but the person who's more measured is likely to stay measured, but with purified consciousness. Not that we'll all be unrecognizable in our personal characteristics, but the personal characteristics will be purified. Now, that said, some of our personal characteristics may just be junk that are getting in our way. Needless anxieties, needless fears, needless aggressiveness, needless this and that. And by advancement in Krishna consciousness, that may be tossed overboard. Does that answer your question? Okay. Yes, in the back. Oh, let's see. What the Acharyas have something to say. About Krishna, it said, the Brahmins, there doesn't seem to be a commentary about the Brahmins' calmness, but Krishna appeared calm, abhyagra, though he was anxious within concerning the marriage. Massaging the Brahmin's feet, abhisprisha, he then inquired from him. So, doesn't quite answer your question, but a sort of calmness is sometimes a feature of a leader. Everybody, okay, hold on. All right, this and this and this and this. It takes not long to sort out, but he doesn't have to go into some sort of frenzy. The frenzy may just get in the way. So he looked at, okay, this and this and this and this, and so we'll do this. Oh, Krishna took action. He didn't dawdle, but he wasn't in a frenzy. Yes?
Hare Krishna. I actually have two questions, if that is okay.
Two questions. And you'll need to hold the microphone close and ask clearly and loudly because you're fighting with the echoes.
So it was mentioned previously that one of the qualities of the Brahmanas is that they never get angry.
It's mentioned previously that a quality of the Brahmin is they don't get angry.
But then we have the example of Durvasa Muni,
Durvasa Muni.
who is quite famous for getting angry. So how can we understand this?
How do we understand? The general quality of Brahmin is peacefulness. But sometimes the Brahmins, especially when they do austerities and penances, it sort of makes you a little more fiery. You have all that pent-up energy. So then they may become more touchy. I can't say too much more about it. Durvasa, that seems to be part of his unique character, that he's easily angered. I don't really have much more to say about it. Sorry.
And the second question is, in the Nectar of Devotion, I think 15th or 16th chapter, it is mentioned that the only qualification for performing devotional service is sincerity.
The only qualification for performing devotional service is sincerity.
And I always understood sincerity as wanting to really do your best in performing devotional service. And for me, that means trying to develop my best qualities that I can give. But then a little bit later, it is mentioned that there is no need to develop good qualities separate of Krishna consciousness. So I feel like this is contradicting itself a little bit, or maybe my understanding of sincerity is not what it's supposed to be.
The only qualification is sincerity. You think of sincerity as always trying to do your best and develop good qualities, or bring into play your best qualities. But elsewhere in the book it says there's no need to separately develop good qualities. Sincerity, as far as I've seen Srila Prabhupada use the term, mainly applies to purity of purpose. You know, if I come and I say, I really want to serve you, but really I'm hoping to make a profit, or to get in good with your crowd and get some advantage, or to oust you from your, learn your job and then take your place. There's some duplicity. A Brahminical quality is arjavam, straightforwardness. So sincerity especially means that we approach Krishna without some other motive. Although even other motives may be accepted. Artarti jigyasu gyanicha, for relief from distress, help with some economic problem. But there's always a core of sincerity. The devotee wants to somehow or other please Krishna. And the more we can put aside other motives and simply want to serve Krishna, the better our position. Is that okay? That said, yes, the emphasis is that if we serve Krishna, all the good qualities will develop. Yes, yasti bhaktir bhagavat chikinchana sarvaya gunais tatra samasate sura. For one who's engaged in the service of Krishna, all the good qualities of the demigods automatically develop. So we don't see much emphasis, try to develop compassion, try to develop steadiness, try to develop determination, try to develop this, try to develop that, try to be a good musician, try to be a good speaker. If you focus on trying to be a good servant of Krishna, try to be single-mindedly engaged in the service of Krishna, then everything you need will develop. Yet there is some scope, like here it says determination is required. So when I read that, I think that means I'm being reminded to be determined. Otherwise, what's the point? Why even mention it? So there seems to be some scope for these things, but not that I'll pay $150 and I'll go to some seminar and I'll learn all about self-control or peacefulness or this or that, and then I'll use that for Krishna. But Prabhupada's emphasis was always on trying to serve and then depending on Krishna to help us. Something else. Oh, I'm not looking at the time. Time is 6:15, so we could do kirtan. Lalitanath's back. Do we have a mridanga today? Do we have? Yeah, we do. No? No instruments today? Maybe something's coming our way. Kartals are there. We have a mridanga we can bring for. Okay. We won't wait for the mridanga though. We'll carry on. And who's leading? Okay, you're on. And let me transfer to you the symbol of authority. Do you want to take this?
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Prabhupada ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda ki jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai. Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gop Gopinath Sham Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan ki jai. Vrindavan Dham ki jai. Navadip Dham ki jai. Jagannath Puri ki jai. Ganga Mai ki jai, Jamuna Mai ki jai, Tulsi Devi ki jai, Bhakti Devi ki jai, Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Gaur Premanande Haribo. Thank you all very much for coming. As you probably know, the conference room is under renovation. And so it seems that for 10 days, more or less, that we won't be meeting there. Here is it seems like we're here. We're looking at the possibility of someplace that might be more suitable. If we do find a place, we'll let Pavan know so that you won't be in the wrong place. And we'll try to let you know also. But most likely tomorrow we're back here. Otherwise, we'll post notices or do something, do our best. And thank you again for coming. Giridhari Hari Puja, we'll have to have you lead Kirtan sometime soon. Thank you. And be sure to get some prasadam before you go. Thank you.